Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and appreciate you guys tuning in for today's video. Always very grateful to have you guys around the channel here. And today, guys, what I want to talk about is that when you try everything, it's like, for example, you watch these YouTube videos on bass fishing and you try what they say in the YouTube videos and nothing works. It's like when you're trying all this stuff that should work but nothing works, and you get frustrated and you spend a lot of time researching and watching videos and learning techniques, and you go out there and try it yourself and it just doesn't work. So I want to speak to that a little bit in today's episode and sort of give you guys some tips and advice, and probably why you're experiencing that, why things are not working for you guys, and think it's going to definitely add up to some less frustrating fishing experiences moving forward. Also, guys, before we get started, thank you very much for everybody that's taken time to hit that subscribe button here at Intuitive Angling. Man, if you want to do one thing to support Intuitive Angling and you like what's going on here, just hit that subscribe button. It's free and easy to do so. And also, the second way, guys, is go into my description, look at that Tackle Warehouse link I put in there, use and bookmark that link anytime you need to buy some fishing gear. The channel, anytime you buy something like a bag of worms or something, the channel gets a small percentage of a commission on the sale, and that's a great way to support the channel if you incline to do so and get some good deals on tackle too. And just really appreciate everybody that's went out of the way to support the channel and help keep the channel on YouTube. Thank you very much for me and my family there. Okay, guys, let's talk about how frustrating this is. I can speak firsthand myself about how frustrating it is to want to learn how to bass fish and want to have success at bass fishing, yet it doesn't work. Because I went through the same thing in a lot slower learning process, because when I first started, learning a lot about bass fishing and really wanted to get better back in the late 70s and early 80s, the only thing we had was magazines. We didn't have any other access to information like is available now with all the YouTube and social media and tutorials and that type of deal. All we had was magazines, and the magazines back then sucked because most of them were written by outdoor writers. And a lot of you guys probably don't remember this, but back in the 70s and 80s, the outdoor writers they thought they were better than the pro fishermen, and they wrote articles based upon their experiences in fishing, and they just didn't know that much. I mean, they talk about how to rig a plastic worm, or how to fish a point, or just real kindergarten levels stuff. And that's really the only way that you could learn. And aside from that, the only other option was to fish with somebody that was a good angler, and that's how you really learn. But in my process, when I tried to absorb all that information that I would read about, it never worked for me. It's like I'd go out and I'd read something and it just wouldn't work. I'll give you guys a prime example. When I first got my very first boat, excuse me, which was a 16-foot leaking flat bottom. You guys have heard me talking about it, with a 9-horse 1967 Evinrude on it, little 12-volt trolling motor. I got it back in 1978 when I was a junior in high school, paid like $200 for it. And I was reading Bassmaster, and I read an article on jigging spoons for bass. So I was all pumped up and excited because I got my boat in like December. So I went down to Grand Lake in Oklahoma, and I was going to try to catch these bass on a jigging spoon based upon the article I saw. So back then they were saying, like, okay, you got to get on these creek channel intersections, and then you put marker buoys out on the drop off, and then you get on the drop off and you jig the jigging spoon vertical over these drop offs, where you got your jigging spoon. So anyway, I'm out there, so I get a paper map. I've got a geographical paper map, and I go back into the back end of Horse Creek at Grand Lake, and they didn't say anything in the article about water visibility. So I get back in there. Water visibility is about a foot. The water temperature is probably 45 degrees, and I find a little drop off. There's like a creek channel drop off, which wasn't much because back then hold on a sec, guys, I got to get this call. Okay, sorry about that, guys. I had to get a phone call real quick. But anyway, what I was saying was I went back into Horse Creek, and I was trying to do everything they said in the article. So I found this little drop off, and Grand Lake doesn't have any drop offs in it, but it's so old, most of them are silted in. So the water is like 15 or 20 foot deep on this little bitty drop off, and I get my jigging spoon out there, and I start putting the marker buoys down. I went back and forth with my little you know, I had one depth finder on the front of the boat, so I went back and forth on this drop off with the trolling motor and put a couple marker buoys down and started jigging a spoon, you know, on this spot. And of course I didn't catch anything because like the water was a foot visibility and 45 degrees, and there were just, it was like, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was clueless to what I was doing. But I thought from reading this magazine article that that's the way you do it and you're going to go out and catch fish, and it never happened. So this is a prime example about what I'm talking about as far as when you think you're doing everything right and you get all this information from YouTube and nothing works. So let's get into what you can do and how you can discern this type of information. Now, first of all, you have to be really, really selective about the content you choose to absorb on YouTube or social media when it comes to fishing information, because guys, there's a lot of guys out there that have bass fishing YouTube videos that don't know what they're doing. They're just regurgitating information that they've heard, and the reason that doesn't work a lot of times is they leave out all the gaps. They'll talk about a technique, but they don't talk about the variables surrounding those techniques in terms of things that may or may not work and how everything's got to come together to make something work. They'll just offer like a generic piece of tips and information on bass fishing, and they think it covers all the bases. You may have an article about excuse me, how to fish a square bill crankbait, or how to flip a jig, or how to throw an Alabama rig, and they give you bits and pieces of information that does not put the whole puzzle together. So one of the things that you have to really discern that will help you not be frustrated about the information that you get is pay attention to the information you're absorbing, because the best information is going to have something like this. Let's say, for example, you know, I talk about, you know, the best color jerkbait to use, and I give you guys some tips and advice on the color of jerkbait that the bass bite best. One of the things that you're going to hear from me on any of my videos, whether it be jerkbait fishing or whatever, is I'm going to lay out a foundational piece of advice and information that usually works probably 50 to 75% of the time. You know, I'll talk about, you know, when you're talking about color on jerkbait, for example, I'll talk about the light intensity and the wind speed and the wind direction, water temperature, water clarity, the time of day, the sunlight angle, you know, the type of bass you're fishing for, the species of bass, and I'll try to integrate all this stuff together to give you a foundation to begin on color. But one of the things that I will tell you about this all the time is that this is a generality, and there are other factors that we do not understand that determines the best color for a jerkbait, for example, that goes beyond the obvious. Now, there may be something in there that we just simply don't understand. There might be something with the coloration of the bait fish that we're unaware of. It could be something about the tint of the water based upon if it's a blue-green, or there's a you know, some type of tannic acid look, or aqua blue. There's some little variation that can cause the generic information as far as color on a jerkbait to change and not work. So ultimately, one of the things that you have to discern on this is you have to take everything with a grain of salt, and basically you have to figure out beyond something that's not working. And this is one of the things that frustrates a lot of people, is they get the information on YouTube or whatever, however they get it, they take it out there, it doesn't work, they get frustrated, you know, they get, you know, lose confidence, all that type of stuff, and it doesn't work. So here's the thing about bass fishing, on any technique that you want to learn, especially when you're trying to learn about bass fishing. Bass fishing is the most difficult sport on the planet. You have got to recognize that right off the bat, because there's so many variables that are both controlled and uncontrolled. And in order for you to hit upon the best way to catch fish and to maximize your day on the water, you have to hit on as many of those controlled and uncontrolled variables at one time as you can. If you happen to hit upon all those just right, then you're going to have a good day on the water. You know, if you happen to hit maybe on half of those out there, happen to be correct about half of those variables, you may have an average day on the water. And if you can't put together any of those variables or lining them up, you're at the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong bait, then you're probably not going to catch very much. It's going to happen to every single person out there. So you have to realize that there's no guarantees any day that you go out on the water that you're going to catch fish. Some of the most confident days when I put my boat in the water, say for example, I've been fishing for 2-3 days and I really think I'm on them and I'm going to do good. I've had days where I knew I was going to whack them and I went out there and never had a bite. That's because fish is an inanimate object. You can't control what the fish is going to do. You can't force a fish to bite. You know, a lot of times you can trick them into biting, but based upon their mood and personality, you simply can't force an inactive fish to bite very often. There are things you can do, but a lot of times they just will not bite anything. So realize that if you are studying up a technique and you learn something about it, you get out there and it's not working, you know, just realize that it happens to everybody. It's nothing that you're doing. And every second that you're on the water, even if you're not catching anything, you're learning something. That's one of the things that ought to offer you a lot of confidence and peace in bass fishing. It's like when you go fishing, every single day, you're assimilating and you're growing your encyclopedia of knowledge as an angler. Even if you don't catch anything, some of the worst days you'll ever have, you can use that as a process of elimination for the next time. And, you know, maybe you have a day that you go out and catch 1 or 2 fish, and you can take that information of those 1 or 2 fish you caught and try to, you know, analyze it a little bit. Why was that? How did it happen? And it helps you catch more fish the next time. So the main thing about that is like, just don't get frustrated when you're not catching them. I know everybody does, and everybody wants to catch them. And, you know, you can beat yourself up when you don't catch them, but join the crowd if you don't, because it happens to every single one of us. And some people are better with that than others. I mean, it's a lot of bass fishing, as far as your success in bass fishing, also has a lot to do with your personality as an individual. Some of the people that I have fished with personally that have struggled with bass fishing a lot tend to be the people that have those really type A controlling personalities, because they're used to controlling everything. And when they get out there on the lake and something doesn't go their way, or it's not working and they can't force something to happen, they get very frustrated about it. And then other people out there that are a lot more laid back and don't have that, you know, that super aggressive, hard charging type of energy to them, they tend to be the better anglers, because they sort of like go with the flow a little bit. They don't get bent out of shape. They don't get mad about stuff. They don't get pissed about stuff. They just sort of, you know, roll with the punches. And that's what you sort of have to have as a bass angler. In order to be successful as a bass angler, you have to have a lot of different qualities. And those qualities are things like using your imagination and your intuition and your creativity to come up with new techniques and new approaches. Another thing is you have to have this attitude when you're fishing that you don't give a crap if you catch them or not. This is very important, and I talk about this a lot, because when you go out there with the attitude that you don't care if you catch one or not, it relaxes you. You don't put any pressure on yourself, and you don't force anything on yourself, and you don't create this anxiety, even if it's on a very small level. And the best anglers that I know, just basically, they don't give a crap if they catch one or not. And that makes them fish relaxed. It makes them fish open. Their casting's more smooth. Their in the boat movements are smoother. Their decision-making process is more accurate. Their ability to adapt and adjust is a lot quicker. And that's why some people are just better than others. And that's why some people fish their whole lives and they don't get very good, and other people don't put much effort into it, and they are awesome anglers. One of the best bass anglers I have ever met in my life, guys, was one of the ones that had one of the worst work ethics. This guy, he was like, you could say he was lazy, and he didn't think about fishing much. He didn't work hard on it. He didn't take very good care of his equipment. He didn't sharpen hooks. He didn't retie line. But when he went out on the water, he had that attitude that I just don't care if I catch one or not. And he wound up catching them more than not. It was incredible. And I've seen other guys that are wound tight as a freaking yo-yo, and they get out there and they work their butt off, and they've got everything perfect, and their tackle is perfect, and they're just all put together perfectly, and they can't catch crap. They struggle to catch fish every day they're out there. So that's just one of the complexities of bass fishing. I mean, that's one of the things I love about it and hate it at the same time. I've got this love-hate relationship with bass fishing, and a lot of it is because of that. So anyway, guys, got off on the topic a little bit more, but basically, guys, just, you know, if you think you're doing everything right and you think you're approaching everything right and it's still not working, just don't get frustrated with it, because, you know, just use those tips and advice I talked about, and more or not, you're going to start seeing some incremental success in your fishing, and it's going to lead to a lot more consistent bass catching day in and day out. So anyway, guys, hope you're well. We'll talk later.